Welcome! You are listening to the CRM Success Show, where you will hear from CRM executives who have overseen some of the most interesting and complex CRM implementations. Your hosts, David Mosry and Kira Whitey, will be bringing you real stories, real insight. Follow along on social media for updates on new episode releases, exclusive content, and much more. Enjoy the show and thanks for listening.
Welcome to the CRM Success Show, where we deep dive into CRM success and failure, delivering real stories with real impact. I'm Dave Mastry.
And I'm Kira Whitey.
And today we're talking with Chris Neudecker, the Senior Director of Engineering at BHG Financial. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, gentlemen. Glad to be a part of this today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Chris. We want to start you off real simple today. Please give our listeners a quick overview of your experience in the Salesforce ecosystem and a little bit about BHG for us.
Happy to. About myself, I am Chris Neudecker. I've been working in Salesforce for almost 15 years now. 2010 when I first got in, and it was just about pure dumb luck. I don't know why. And it's been a great transition, for at least from the last 15 years of just starting off as an admin and trying to understand how things work inside Salesforce, to seeing it evolve over the years, especially from a development standpoint, from an admin standpoint, a business analyst standpoint, architecture standpoint, and so forth. So it's got exciting aspects to it, and the things you can build are just unbelievable. So that's been a ton of fun. Worked for a number of great companies, some as contractor, some as full time as well. And currently, right now in an engineering state, I oversee engineering teams from the aspect for a lending company called BHG, which has an amazing story to it. It's a small privately owned company that a friend and two brothers started in 2001. It was right before 9/11. And they had an idea and a vision and a dream to be able to provide lending to healthcare owners, people who might be a doctor that has a business or a dentist or owns a business and so forth, and watch them grow and succeed as well too, though. And of course, as they provide that lending, they also sell these loans out. So we have a market of we were lending to, and the market we were selling to as well too. So as this business has continued to grow exponentially, last year we did over $4 billion in lending alone, just for a small little group, 1,000 employees. So great story, highly motivated owners with their family members who all help drive this company, and we continue to see it grow. Look forward to it.
That's awesome. And I think one thing that really intrigued me about your background in the Salesforce ecosystem to date, you've really got a nice variety of end users, consulting firms, ISVs. You've worked with onshore, nearshore, offshore resources. You've done financial services, insurance, healthcare, education. So you've really seen a lot during your time in the space. What do you think's been probably one of the, alongside the variety, what do you think has been one of the benefits that kind of trajectory of your career has provided you when you go into a new organization?
That's a great question. See, just being able to be exposed to all these other industries gives you an insight to something. Doesn't always mean it's applicable to the next place you go, but at least it gives you insight to things that might work and the things that you can test and try as well. I've been very fortunate. I really have. Part of it has just been necessity, where I've been able to go and work in these other industries because they needed somebody at the time that might be able to help them bridge their ideas. And I just, God let me go ahead and be a part of that. And I'm thankful for that as well too. But at the same time, you sometimes can get jaundiced as well too, right? Because you get stuck in your ways because it worked here. I don't want to try something new here. If it doesn't work, look like a failure at the same point in time. So it does have those unique balances, but being a part of all these different industries has definitely helped me see things and be a part of stuff that I could only have imagined otherwise. So.
Yeah, that's great. So all in all, about 15 years within the Salesforce ecosystem, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Awesome. I'll ask you a question. If you feel like taking a pass, you can. But
Sure.
out of all the roles that you've had, which has been your favorite so far?
I think this one's probably my favorite now. I mean, they're all unique and different, right? And so each one has gotten better by the years. I just have a really good team with really good people at this company, and so I'm very fortunate to be a part of that. I don't really consider myself a manager or a leader. I mean, I feel like myself as a team member, and I treat everybody as we're all equal to a degree, just like you would your kids. They're all the same. You love them all the same, and you just want to see them grow. So my job is just to help them grow. and help the company achieve their goals. And that's really kind of how I treat things. But this group is great. They really are. I'm very fortunate. So this right here is my favorite.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about the team that you kind of inherited, the landscape of how Salesforce is and was currently used when you took the role with BHG just over 2 years ago from now.
Mm-hmm.
Just give us a sense of size, how many users, what products,
Sure.
and so on.
When I walked in the door, BHG, like many other companies, had been growing, extremely amount since 2020, right? Funds of cost of doing business was much cheaper at the time, so they were just continuing to grow, had a lot of new ideas and things they wanted to expand on. So they took those risks and they continued to build new businesses, new divisions, and so forth as well too. And of course, for me in the Salesforce realm, it means more applications that people are going to utilize, more items that we need to focus on. And when I got here, part of that was kind of coming to a halt. It was like, whoa, now interest rates are increasing. So things need to change. So I had over 100 and I want to say it was like 120 or so contractors and full-time people at that moment in time. And over the past few years, we haven't had that growth. We've had a downturn for us, which has been really tough for me to see these many people walk out the door. And I hadn't had to do layoffs like this since 2008, which was just atrocious back then, right? So at this time, you people who have really put their blood and sweat into it have been asked to move on. And so you want to see them continue to succeed and you help them out over and over and over. But we have gone towards, instead of the in-house stuff, more of a managed services agreement where we have a fixed cost set for our development team. And we know what that's going to be, obviously offshore, onshore, and so forth as well too. And we don't go above that, right? So that helps financially as an organization that makes money from lending. And when interest rates are high, our margins get tighter and tougher, right? So we are hopeful as interest rates go down that we can continue to go and grow more than that we have over the past few years. But that's where we were, at least when I walked in the door, and kind of what we're at now. So I do have a set of senior leaders, and we help oversee we'll say, more of our managed services partners, and get that work done. We still have a few groups internally that are not a part of that are growing, but for the most part, our Salesforce drivers are focused on managed services and that team.
Perfect. Okay, and then just in terms of how BHG use Salesforce, so unsecured lending in the healthcare space, buying and selling loans, reducing risk, if any risk at all. We kind of get that, what the business do, but please expand on that. But
Sure.
Relating to Salesforce, like how are BHG using Salesforce? What does it enable them to do?
Yeah, that's great. BHG decided to utilize Salesforce as a lending operation, lending origination systems, or LOS as many would call it. So they decided to say this system will be our ultimate system in determining how lending comes through, right? From an underwriting standpoint, from how we aggregate information from our third-party systems, such as credit lenders, LexisNexis, background checks, and so forth, as well, OFAC checks in regards. So Salesforce is that to-all be used system by everybody at the company in regards to lending and mass. So that has continued to expand and grow as each of these groups, from an underwriting standpoint, from a risk standpoint, from a security standpoint, and so forth. Well, they all work operatively inside Salesforce. So it's a really highly well-used system. Now, if it were me at the beginning, I probably wouldn't go back and start and say, let's just start from scratch. I would probably use an app. Is probably a question you would ask. Hey, what about Encino? What about some of the other type of items that are available to this? And to get that speed to market, and to go through the headaches that those people who had already built that for, I'd probably delve in those items. But this was before I got here, and they'd already gone down that path. And so right now it's working perfectly for them. Again, $5 billion in lending with no problem this last year, and we're continuing to ramp up and continue to grow without any headaches or issues whatsoever.
That's great. So the business is using Salesforce as its lending, basically in-house built lending origination system. You're also using Marketing Cloud though, right?
We do, yes, sir. Our marketing group utilizes Marketing Cloud for a number of items, actually, from journey builders, from just communications as well for our particular leads and potential individuals who we were looking to do business with. Also utilizes it from data and statistics at the same point as well too. How did this particular journey work for us? What can we do better? How can we improve and inform? We do have a data analytics team that captures this information for them as well too, as they run regression analysis and hypotheticals at the same time. So it's how they've embraced not just Salesforce but also Marketing Cloud here is truly awesome to see, and the success of that as well too.
That's great. So you took over this org. There was a lot of pre-built products, Salesforce uses, as you inherited the business. How did that relate to different business units? Because I know we talked a lot in the brief around having to consolidate, I think, up to 8 business units down to a handful. And talk to us about the process of identifying what business units could be removed or reduced or condensed, and how do you decommission a business unit from Salesforce? A little bit about that project.
Sure. Great points, because it's not something most people really face, right? Hey, you've had businesses inside your org. How do I get rid of said business now that maybe that particular business unit is gone, but maybe divested, shared over, and so forth. So it's not always easy, especially when they were all in one org, because many of the places I worked in the past, they had multiple orgs, right? If you were like Honeywell and you had 110 at some point because you had all these different business units, you're like, yeah, it's no problem. You can cipher that one off, right? But here, everybody worked in the same org. So with each of these business units, you certainly want to define what it is that made their business unique as a user. And we schema out everything, such as here, how does something come into this particular unit? Is it dependent on another unit? If not, great. We just work our way down this little trifecta sheet that we kind of have. Defines whether or not we can remove some of that information or whether or not it actually has to stay. So it becomes really difficult. So we have been in the process of removing 4 older business units that are out. One of them been sold. Actually, another one's been spun off. 2 others are kind of closed up. So each of them have a different process. For those who have never had to do it, I say draw it all out. Get you like a good usage chart and say, here's what's unique to each of these businesses, and define what it is you're trying to get out of there and why, and how will that impact, right? What's your regression testing going to get? How will that impact our others? For us, we also have a system called Grax. That's where we do our backups on, but it has a beautiful schema system. If you've never had a chance to toy with it, that schema will tell you all the child relationships that this particular item has throughout your entire antenna of Salesforce realm. So you can say to yourself, if I want to go archive this particular item, how's it going to affect somewhere else? And it'll give me that preview as well too, though. So that's a little trick that you can utilize. There are system tools that can help you divest that information from your system and how it could affect. Of course, there's testing through either maybe Capado, ExcelQ, and many others as well too, that give you some of those benefits as well. But for us, it's sitting down, defining what's going to be important to pull out. What was that business using? How is it going to affect, and so forth. And once you start to have that sculpture in place, then you can kind of carve out what's imperative and whether you can pull it all out or only parts of it. Does that help a little bit?
Makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Can you give us an example? Though I get if you sell a business unit, obviously you would have to pull that out. If you're shutting it down, like I guess you can just leave it there. I don't know necessarily what the harm is.
That's very true.
So like, but what's an example of when you would like literally split it? You're keeping the business unit, but you want to move their processes somewhere else. And was that on the Salesforce work, or was that like just something else?
So for a business unit, let's just say that's being divested. We had a collections company at one point that was also inside here, but now they're an independently owned unit, right? So we took out what was necessarily used by them, and they opened up a new system, another Salesforce system outside externally from us, utilize those processes for them. We provided said data for historical purposes on their side. We keep an old copy for us just from compliance side, but we removed it from our system as well too. One, just to make sure that there's no overlapping items, because technically they are split from us. We don't need to have others potentially, especially auditors. They don't like to see that. It's like, hey, that you no longer own this business. Why do you have this information still here if it's going on and beyond from what auditing is necessary? So we do those items, and partly because to make those auditors happy, partly because we only have so much space in our org as well too, right? From a development standpoint, since we built everything from scratch, we utilized a ton of objects, metadata types inside of our system as well too, almost to the max. So just removing some of these older ones help us define what we can do and add better as well too. But I don't know if that's mirror Maz is kind of what you're looking for. If you'd like me to expand a little bit more.
So. I think so. I mean, I'm going to be honest. You don't fully get it, and I'll tell you why. Right? Because if you're in the lending business and you have a loan and you're collecting payments, then you sell that business. Don't you still need the history of the historical payments? Because obviously,
not all businesses were about lending, though. Hence, what I just said. One of them was a collecting. It was not a lending. So hence, here I have a defined business unit that's completely different, and that might be true. But I see what you mean. Hey, if you were all doing the same function, and this was business unit consumer versus business unit commercial, I fully would get that in regards. That makes sense.
But the history is still yours, is my point, right? Even
History
the collections, right? Let's say, I don't know, one of your collection agents did something scrupulous. Would that be under the new company or the old company, right? Wouldn't you need?
That's under the new company. It's divested
even
from
if
us.
It was
it's
2 years ago?
That's right. They didn't sell it. If they sold it and part of that negotiation was like, hey, we're only buying your assets, we're not buying your liabilities, that would be different.
Right.
We keep all those things, right? If they buy the assets and everything else with it too, then that goes with them. This situation was more of a collection agency. They didn't own these loans, but they're collecting based on loans that have not going to default. So now we pay them just like any other third-party collection agency. Here's the lender, or here's the person that borrowed said money. Here's their file. We provide that to you separately. You don't live inside our org. We give it to you. We've separated those items out. And that's part of that reason why we don't have them inside. And we still have it from an auditing standpoint, but we still remove it from our Salesforce org. We store it in the blob storage as well. And that would be why.
In what format?
Azure.
Azure blob. So how do you reference that data?
Actually, with Grax, I can connect that data. It actually connects to that blob storage and it references that data for us and tells me everything about it.
What? I'm sorry, did you use?
Grax system does.
I haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
So it's just CSVs you're dumping there?
You would be, yes.
Okay. It works. Yeah, so tell us about that, I guess, segmentation process. So, okay, I get identifying the data. That should be relatively straightforward, particularly if it's a collection, right? I'm assuming
Sure.
you have, right, a collections object record type somewhere that ties to a customer. You know that no other customers relate. No, right? He wasn't you didn't take a separate loan to him. Let's say, you can cut that out. What about all the Salesforce code? How do you tackle that? That's related to that business unit.
Yeah, that's a great question there too. What we end up doing is we will deprecate things that we can. Not all things can be just because of how they were entwined necessarily, right? But we'll go through from our testing standpoint is what will happen if we remove this old code. How does it affecting current items as well? Certainly what we do is we'll say, hey, is it a flow? Can we disable a flow that meets some of these needs? Is it all Apex to a degree, et cetera? For our particular instance, I'm sure very few meet the same need. We're 80% Apex driven. That was built, right? It wasn't built on flows. It was just built straight from development style. So we have to do a lot of testing to make sure that those things can be removed. Otherwise, we just ignore it and move forward. Say that's fine. It's just going to have to be a part of our tech debt. And what we do is we historically put code around it saying, hey, here's our story. This is why this is in here. We don't remove it because of the following. Here's your JIRA ticket that it's assigned to. You can read all to it right there. But that's typically what we do in those instances.
So do you start at the, let's say, the object field level and say, okay, this is a collection
we do.
field,
Yeah.
and then go back to find the code that hits that?
Exactly. Working backwards in that same response right there. You're exactly right. Since collections are really an action, loan was the activity and the object to a degree. Collections is more of an action that occurs afterwards, right? The default, failure to pay, and so forth. So we will work from that regards. Any of the ones that we had a default aspect to them and giving that out. So what we've done as a corporation is you have to write that off on your book, basically saying, hey, I sent this to collections. I hope I get something from it. Otherwise, it's just out there. And it'll still sit inside Salesforce, but we just remove it out of the Salesforce org to make our auditors happy. It sits in blob and we reference it if necessary. Now, data analytics team still has they can yank stuff necessarily for them, which is separate for us. and let our business owners know, hey, well, we have 1,300 loans out here that are in default that we give over to collections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they can see that aspect a bit easier there.
So, like, in terms of your user base, how do you get them to sign off? Like, I assume you have to regression test the whole system, not just right, not just the functionality that you ripped out. And maybe they're the data point somewhere someone's using. I don't know. How do you get them to like regression test and
That's a great question.
sign off?
We have
Particularly when the functionality is not changing, right? It's like,
that's right.
Oh, please go test the whole system. How do we know it works
That's
the same?
So to those business units, they don't care that we're yanking out of as long as they can do what they need necessarily with one item or not, right? But it's important to us on the technology side to get things out, not have that tech debt wasted inside there, because you pay for stuff that you're not using as well in Salesforce, like many others. So we show them that importance. We get that approval. Our product team works great with them. Says, hey, this is what we're going to remove. This is why we're going to remove it. Here's who will still be able to access it if necessary afterwards. Here's where they would go if they had a question about it. Here's the benefits of us doing so as well too. So they get that all up front laid out. We go to a committee. Committee says, yeah, that sounds great. Let's go ahead and continue to process this and move those items out. We approve it, and then we'll test it as we go within each sprint. Sprint 1, sign off. Here's what we've done. If we've collected nothing and it's still planning or something, great. Sign off, move to the next level. Sprint 2 shows that actionable steps. Sprint 3, sprint 4. Sometimes you have to just wait till the end of this whole project per se, whether it's 2 or 3 sprints, to really get true sign off and say, yep, that is right, it's accurate. And we give them those testing scenarios. Here's your test 1, here's your test 2, test 3, here's what we tested, here's how it was, here's their scripts, and then they go and just verify that it was done correct. So it is hard with a lot of different business units and getting the right person to believe and agree. So our processes are slow because of that, right? And that's okay. We'd rather do it the right way than anything else. But that's kind of what we have in place here.
Did you ever have to reverse something?
No, fortunately not. Don't jinx me now either. Don't jinx me now. Okay, but we do have to go from time to time. We might have somebody that says, hey, state of California is doing an audit. They wanted to know what happened in 2018, certain item, and we just go pull that out of the old storage item through the Grax. So here's your records. We can import it back into Salesforce if necessary, if that whole system's still there, or we just give them the CSV aspects of what they need, the questions they've asked.
What so you're decommissioning the business units. What were some of the challenges that you ran into when carrying out this activity? I'm sure it wasn't a simple process. So no. I know there's going to be plenty of challenges. So maybe the top 3 and just why they were in that order, perhaps.
Yeah. Top 3. First one is really what we're about to do, is it really going to benefit us as a company, right? And that just takes time of going in and analyzing each of these items to a degree, because they weren't built with a methodology behind them. They was built like a business need, and they were all built before most of us got here. So it's really just defining, if we strip this out, who are we affecting now? Is any of this tied to any of the code inside here, right? If you have Elements Cloud, you could probably see those types of things. We don't have that, so it's the old-fashioned way for us in many ways. And just doing what we do is with the Excel queue, which is a great testing tool for those of you who haven't utilized it. Also, Capato has a great testing tool inside of it as well too that helps us at the same point. So we use those heavily, and we take photos and videos of our success as well. But that's the first part. Number 1 is, who's it going to affect, and how's it going to affect our current lending processes, right? Number 2 is, are we really going to benefit, or are we going to waste money just because we don't want to have this debt inside here? And if not, what's our ROI? What's our cost benefit analysis of it? Some of that is just scratch paper. We won't know everything to the very end, but some of it is just the aspect of us laying it down, like, here's how we will reduce the following, and this is what this does for us, and here's how this benefits. And then number 3, just is it going to make our current users' life easier in some form or fashion? And those are our top 3 things, and they're hard to define. They really are hard. Sometimes they're really hard to define. Sometimes you don't even know if you can test to get the success from it. But that's what you're hoping for. Life isn't all cut and dry, so it's about achieving some of those goals by doing the things necessary to get you what you know is best for you as well.
So with the first challenge and addressing that challenge. So who will it affect? How will it affect the current lending process? Obviously, you conducted I'd assume, an extensive requirement gathering exercise. Curious, did you use internal talent? You had internal
Yes,
FTEs for that? Did you bring in a consulting firm?
Nope. It was all internal. Everything was internal aspect. We have we still have a really great product team who has a lot of knowledge about what's going on, how does it affect, who to go reach out to, who to speak with. And with that knowledge has been success for us, because without them, like you say, Kirill, it would be a complete mess. And it would be even harder for an outside consulting firm to come in and try to guess that, much less. So we were very fortunate in this instance, because for those who don't have that, I'm sure it's an uphill battle from gondola of the types. Man, it's just craziness.
Do you think there could be an advantage, though, of having a fresh perspective? Obviously, I'm sure there are many different ways of, just to play devil's advocate, I'm sure there are many different ways of decommissioning business units, and each sector industry will do it differently. Pros and cons, or you think for you guys it was just knowing how the business used the loan origination system, that was like paramount, more important.
It was paramount. It really was more important than anything. Is how am I not going to screw up what we do now, and for our users now, or for those who are seeking a loan now, those types of things. But you're right. I mean, I'm sure somebody can give us a lot of great other perspective that could have been done and taken in order to do so. It's just for this particular instance, it would be very hard, because without having those knowledgeable people to say, yes, this is no longer utilized, this one is not important, etc., that would be really difficult for any third-party person to just guess and start to try to test. It makes that time frame even longer, and you spend more money on that as well. Yeah. Again, just for our instance.
And I guess as well, in addition to yourself with a variety of industry experience, I'm sure there are people internally that have also been business analysis or BAs on other projects, other industries, other sizes of companies, and so on. So still getting some of that fresh input, I'm sure, in different areas.
Yep, by far. You're right about that. You nailed it.
Why do you think it took so long for the business to undergo this exercise? Do you think it was is it just a project bandwidth perspective, or did anything happen that kind of accelerated the timeline to undertake this activity, this project?
No, it was like you mentioned, but the earlier part of it, to a degree. It was just, one, we all have full-time jobs, so you only have so much time to allocate to saying, yeah, I can go help you all, and none of it ever aligns, right? It's like trying to get the stars up. Okay, you have this important meeting for you. This one has this important meeting over here, so maybe every third day we can work on those types of items, right? And it's just really getting those things lined up. They're important projects, but are they more important than others? No, right? What drives us is what's going to bring revenue to the bottom line. Hence, they will always have more favorability than anything else. And even though we need to do things that make auditors happy, or we need to do things that make other business units happy to make them more successful, at the end of the day, it's how do we continue to drive business for ourselves and make money, because it's a business. It feeds all these families. It feeds all these people. And we lend money to people who need it as well, too, do the same thing. So it's that aspect. Anything else?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Now, you mentioned the third challenge was understanding where and how it will benefit users, right? The goal of the project was to have that takeaway. So reflecting back, I'm sure you can tell us, I know it's probably still early days to an extent, but some of these ROI benefits will be for years to come. But initial kind of successes from this project relating to users specifically, what were some of the benefits that you saw across the business?
Really, this is just me being honest with you, it made our security team happy, because it clears out audits for them and makes them extremely less concerned, right? So for those users, they're like, hey, this is fantastic, right? When the FDIC walks in, even though we're not really regulated, but we are 49% owned by another bank, and so they get to walk in and they get to dictate things that we have to follow and do. Hence, it makes that group really happy, and therefore that business unit is extremely happy. How does it affect underwriters? Yeah, I don't think it really necessarily benefited them, but for other constituents here in the org, it certainly improved their variabilities and the things that they needed to check the list off of, and how it was affecting them. But that is hard. So, but that is a smaller group. our underwriters and our loan officers and so forth are a much bigger group. Security teams, compliance teams are a much smaller group, but they're still very important nonetheless.
Okay. What, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being fantastic success, 1 being a disaster, what would you rate the project overall? And what do you think your users would rate it?
Well, again, if you ask the security group, they're going to say high marks, right? For everybody else who had to be involved, didn't really see a benefit of it. Like, I don't know, just another waste of time, everything, right? That's probably what they would say. For me, I'd say it was a very high mark because it was a great thing that we were able to remove this particular items, satisfy one of our business units, and make them extremely happy. So I would give it certainly a 9 out of 10, at least in my mind. But again, it depends on who you asked. Each of those people are going to have a different perspective.
And I guess upon reflection, is there anything you would do differently in terms of if you had to run this project again, what would that one difference be, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I just really the timing of it, right? Is I would ask, is this imperative that we do this year? So is it more imperative for next year? Those types of things. Just get better qualifications of if it is that important, which I'm sure it is it more important to do this now and focus these resources that are more fixed from a managed service side here on other things that are going to help us grow? That would probably be the only thing I'd ask more. Either way, it have to be done, whether it's done 26, 2025, so forth. It's just which one have been more important to us. That's all. That's the only thing I would have questioned.
Yeah, I would think shutting down a business unit, you have a little bit more flexibility than like if you sold it. You probably
That's right.
have to get
That's
rid of
right.
that info.
That's right. Which we did. One, you're right. And
Right.
we did have to get it out. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Legal will be all over you. Yeah. Then the other thing, like this is like it really has a lot of parallels to cleaning up tech debt, because that's almost really what it is, right? You're having unused code sitting in there, and that's basically all it is. We talked a little bit about the benefit to your users. What about your developers? Did they feel any kind of lift of like, wonderful, I don't have to worry about this stuff, we're now making new features?
Yeah, that's a great point. You're right, because nobody really worries about the developers most of the time when they do things. But it's the happiness to see that they would not be having to deal with this legacy code when they're doing testing or when they're writing things as well too, or when they're trying to do that work. To see them be happy was amazing. So like, oh God, I think this is going to help us out tremendously because of X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C. Like, oh, I never really thought about that, and I'm sure our business units didn't either. But that was it brought so much joy to them to see these legacy items yanked out, and it gave them more almost like a cleaner space of what they can do stuff with. So you're right. That was something that I don't think anybody ever really appreciated, but them. They really did. So you brought that up, man. So I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's actually one of my pet peeves. Sometimes developers are like so terrified of deleting something.
Sure.
So they they'll I don't know, add a switch or comment it out, or they just have like an old version, or they rename it to old, and then they'll have I have 4 versions, like older.
That's right.
Current, and then they'll have current
as of date following. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know.
Right.
You're right.
New too. Yeah, that kind of stuff makes me crazy. I'm like, you just rip it out. If you want to back it up somewhere, particularly when you have proper development organizations. So what about Marketing Cloud service? That stuff too, you ripped out like old case data, I mean email sends, like all your marketing?
Not so much. Yeah, some of those we did have to. Some of those we, especially if the prior to the organization that we bought, they wanted that data, we did take it out of us per that contract, right? That's no longer part of our aspect. But others we did have to leave behind just because of how our marketing team utilizes it, from the collections and so forth as well too. Hey, we don't want to continue sending items to these people. Please make sure we sign our system that this person did default. We're not trying to do business with them moving forward. Don't waste any journeys on them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that part was not deciphered out. You're right about that. And so it did stay in there for those particular purposes as well.
Okay, cool. But you can modify the
you can.
The target, right? The target list for your marketing campaigns to filter them.
Very true.
Yeah. And then what about like system integrations? You had to like do that in parallel? So if you're removing a person, right, from your CRM, the integration in theory could just put it right back, unless
Clean one, you want to clean the other, right?
you have
Type
to,
of thing.
not want to, you have no choice. Yeah, so you did
Exactly.
those also in tandem and coordinate with the
We
other.
did. In tandem. No, we did. Yes, very much so. Which also takes a little bit longer as well too, because it is a different group utilizing a different system, with a different database as well. Also, plus again, like I told you, we do have a third-party data team, analytics team that utilizes data at the same time. They're actually the ones who feed us most of our leads as well too. So they force those leads into us. So we want to make sure we don't affect their systems downstream as well. And if we sold that loan, that's another system that you got to make sure that you go planning with. Hey, this particular item was sold. This particular one was default. Please note, make record over here. We got to make sure that's going to affect y'all as well too. And so it does take a lot of cross-functional work.
So just before we move to the kind of second topic area, one of the things we talked about to an extent at length was around the success the business have had around mailers. So could you set the scene a little bit for us there? Because all right, it's not rocket science, but it is interesting.
It is.
And there's a lot of thoughts we all have on that topic. So over to you, Chris.
Sure. So as y'all were, for everybody else, paint that picture, myself, Carol, as we were all talking about how does this company really kind of drive revenue to them? And I said, well, they do a lot of mailers. And these gentlemen were like, what? Mailers? What, you mean like really physically mail out stuff to people? Who does that anymore, right? And I thought the same thing when I walked in the door, and they were like, oh no, we get most of our stuff from mailers. My brain was like, there's no possible way. This defies all logic. But it's actually true. This particular company, it does do electronical marketing. It does do a lot of things electronically, but it also does things from a physical mailing standpoint. And they work really hard to make these mailers very unique and tailored to an individual specific person that they're reaching out to. So it's not like those standard ones that you might get in the mail that look like any other white plain envelope. They're very tailored, almost invitation, like, hey, you're invited to the following party to a degree. You open it up, has these maybe confetti or something that pops out of it to a degree. They spend a lot making these designs work for them, and it is still extremely successful for them. I don't know the reasoning behind it all. I just know that it works, and so they continue to invest money in these mailers, and they continue to see a return that comes from such, man. And it's a higher return than it is electronically. So maybe this is a niche now. Maybe what was once taboo is now a niche where people are like, hey, this is unique. I'm getting something different. And so hence I'm going to open it up. And I might like to do business with this company to a degree. I, just like you all, been dumbfounded by it, but it is true. They are very successful at mailers.
Personally, I'm not super surprised, to be completely honest. I know local businesses do very well with them. Restaurants those hanging menus things.
Sure.
They do really well. Gyms do really well. I still get stuff on my windshield. People would not be doing that stuff, and that's much more labor intensive than a mailer.
It
right?
is. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
By far.
Yeah. So those stuff tend to do well. I think it's just more your industry that's a little bit
Very
right,
well
because
could
you're
be.
really targeting professionals, right? Doctors,
We are.
PAs.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think maybe it's because it's super targeted, right? You're not blessed.
It is very super targeted. You're right. Yeah, they typically know who it is they're sending them to, and what their background is and so forth. So there is a little bit more science to it versus just mail everybody something, spend this much out, right? So, but it's
Cool.
just very successful to see these results.
So one of the things that I also think is heavily underutilized, but I don't have any even anecdotal evidence on this one, used to be huge. Print ads.
Mm-hmm.
You guys try those?
Yes, yeah, very much so. You're
Really?
right. We still do a little bit of print ad as well too. Not as much as they do for the individual mailers that we might have, but they still do focus on some print ads, a couple publications that they will focus on, and where they can get them. Obviously, think about not Journal of Health, but just items that are going to be professionally driven towards maybe a PA or a nurse practitioner or a dentist or something, right? And do so for a quarter or whatnot. But they still see success in a number of those things as well too, though. But again, still that individual tailored message that they're mailing out to them has been the most successful for them.
Okay, great. So bringing it back to tech.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do print ads and mailers with Marketing Cloud?
Well, we have to use a third-party service to make it all work, actually, and they won't
But
let
it
me
is tied
disclose who
in
that third party
somehow.
is. But it is, yeah, it is tied in somehow. I just can't necessarily go into too much delving of how they do their aspects there. But it is a third-party group, gives us the information, and we share that information with them as well too. Send that information back and forth. But they particularly says this is a particular item that we are sending to this particular person. We see a copy of it. You know exactly what it's going to look like. What that message says, who it goes to,
Oh, I
address,
know
it's
what you're
to.
telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
You're using like a fulfillment house,
I
basically.
will not confirm nor deny, but
Okay,
I
not a
will just
problem.
say that we do things
Okay.
like you might be thinking.
So talking about completely unrelated industries, lots of people like to send out swag. In the financial service industry, it's not common to send out flyers about my funds to, let's say, a fund manager. Hey, why don't you pitch? Right? It's
Sure.
very so they have mailer packets, let's say, or I'm sending out swag. Salesforce does that. Everybody knows, right? I'm going to
Sure.
send those sweatshirts. I'm going to send the mugs. Right? They basically produce a file, send it to a fulfillment house, and they often print on demand, mail it out,
Mm-hmm.
and let you know. Okay, but taking that back, you're putting phone numbers on the mailers or website, or how do you track? Or is that okay to talk about tracking the response?
And you were cutting out on me for a second there, but I believe you say we're putting phone numbers and so forth. We
That
are.
was a question. Phone numbers, email, or website, and how do you track the
We give
response?
them a direct URL, right, for them to come and log
Okay.
in. So it's a personalized URL that those people have, and we say, if you're interested, here's your unique URL. Please visit this address, verify who they are as well afterwards, because it could be, they could have moved in between those times. We'll make sure that this is the right person, and so forth. But yes.
Okay, cool. Kiro, you wanted to talk about
Yeah, we want to
automation?
talk a little bit. Yeah, we want to talk a little bit about your Capado project. So again, kind of what you were using prior to Capado. What was your experience? Why did you need to seek a replacement? What did that
Sure.
process look like? That kind of stuff.
That's a great question. And when I got here, the organization was utilizing AutoRabbit, which is another system that companies do use and many do successfully as well. For us, we felt Capado was much better for us because we had multiple business units using one Salesforce org. So we could see how the branch changes would be made. And AutoRabbit wasn't giving us that ability to do so. So if something got deployed, even though we tested it, it could have still yanked in old code. And that would happen quite a bit on the AutoRabbit aspect for us. But with Capado, we'll just say our walls in place, but also we see what branches really need to go and can verify. So we have had no issues in the last year since implementing this system and having our releases be successful each moment in time where we hadn't had to roll something back where we had another issue to degree. And it worked out for us again because we see everybody, all these business units building at the same time, we're deploying for them, and they're all using a lot of the same common objects, right? And that's how. So it's just more successful for us. Plus, Capado also has some great little testing features internally. If you haven't had a chance, some of them are, they'll call them AI-driven items that you can utilize as well too, and they do help you internally test ahead of time as well, and that gives our developers something that they didn't have from an AutoRabbit standpoint, which is really unique and helpful. So we've been much more successful in that regards for the last year from our implementation.
Got it. Were there any other vendors that you were kind of reviewing, like GearSet or
They did.
Flowsum? Or
They did Flowsum as well. I'm a
yeah,
Flowsum fan. I love Flowsum a lot, right? And so to take out bias, so I allowed a number of engineers on our team to say, okay, let's put down all the ones that we could use in this instance, and what are the things that we need to meet our needs? Can each of these meet those needs? And it really came down to Capado and Flowsum, and then Capado just had a few other items that was beneficial to our particular item versus anything else, and that's why Capado won out in that regards. But I'm a Flowsum guy. I love Flowsum. I think I even have a cert or two in Flowsum as well too, though, and they have a really great product as well too. And I don't take away from anybody else's as well. AutoRabbit's going to meet other people's needs. GearSet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just for our particular items, Capado met all of our needs, and that's what was best for us.
good. How did from a cost perspective, how did they differ between AutoRabbit and Capado? Was one significantly more? Were they on the same same kind of lines?
Same lines. It was the same category. Obviously, Capado wants to win that business, so they're going to try to do the best they can to get you away from AutoRabbit, and hence it was the same price in that regards. Yeah, it was the same price in that regards. But we also saw if we're going to pay for the same items, we get all these more benefits from Capado too, and so we appreciated that as well at the same time. One thing that we did have with AutoRabbit that you didn't have with Capado was a backup and restore system. So when I talked about Grax, as that's what we have for our backup and restore. A lot of people go with own backup or go to Vesa or some others to a degree, but we utilize Grax, and it's a great tool, really, really great tool, and has been for many years. So we swapped out the AutoRabbit backup and restore with Grax separately, and then Capado as well too. But they work hand in hand quite easily.
So for listeners not very familiar with Capado, obviously Salesforce requires test scripts, right? Automated testing. So what's required? You have to have, I think, like 75-80% test coverage.
75.
I mean, assuming you're doing it right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There's always workarounds, but you're right. Yeah, 75% test coverage is typically what they say here.
Yeah. So what does Capado do that's obviously above and beyond that you want third parties pull?
For us, it was just being able to see how each developers and developer group were going to affect each other if something was to happen. If it was a class change, if we were going to change something here, who was it going to affect? And we didn't want old code yanked in, which consistently happened a lot with our predecessor system, right? So it gives these developers, each one, hey, in the testing, here's what I'm going to change. What's going to happen if I do the following? How's it going to operate amongst our sandboxes as well too, right? So here I can test this environment, move up to code merge. After that success, move it up to QA UAT levels before deployment, and it gives them those step-by-step instances of how it's going to affect and what's going to happen, and they can record those in the items as well too. So we see the code that they built, developed, we see their successful testing, and we see them being able to move that along the chain with no problems. And that helps us out. We didn't get that with our predecessor, right? So now we know we can save a lot of time moving up faster through our deployments and our works versus what the time that it took and the prep time that it took.
Stuff.
Exactly.
So it probably really helped with your segmenting out the old
divisions
too.
Exactly. It did by far. So those are huge benefits to us. And again, not everybody faces that because we're very unique in our instance. So, but for us, it definitely helps us tremendously.
So we covered a lot of current and previous projects that you've been busy overseeing and directing. What's next for you and BHG? Anything on the horizon in terms of AI and agent force, or in terms of just kind of other transformational projects that are being powered through Salesforce?
That's a great question there. For us, we do want to utilize some of the call them AI availability that you might provide from Salesforce, right? So we are going to test some items for us as an organization. Where we could probably do best is from our customer service standpoint. Like you mentioned, hey, how can I utilize this system to help meet a lot of the questions that we get from our service side about people's loans and so forth, and being able to kind of almost automate that, where a system can say, hey, customer XYZ, blah, 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 you verified who you are. Here's what your outstanding balance is. Here's when your next due, balance or payment is due, and so forth as well. Or do you have a question? Do you want more current rates? Do you want more something else to a degree? Just being able to provide that where we take some of that pressure off of our customer service team who's having to answer those individually. So we're still growing in that uniqueness as well too, though. At the same time, be able to offer rates, be able to offer instant kind of packages. Okay, well, here you are, just based on your history we have, we might be able to offer you this particular loan at this particular rate for this particular time frame. If that doesn't meet your need, let's go ahead and delve deeper to a degree. Just kind of have an instant offer. Maybe that's what some of them are there for, and save some of that time. But I think those are things that we'll start to delve into here in 2025. And we still need to define it, but really for us, helping our customer, more importantly, I think would be the best, most significant aspect by utilizing AI. And so we're going to try to invest in that a little bit more.
Any thoughts on using AI for like either the loan approval or the loan approval amount? type stuff?
And we have some of that already embedded into our automation to a degree, right? The thing is, though, we talked about those auditors before, right? They don't like automated underwriting. They don't at all, and it's one of the first things they say. We want to know if this is what you have. We want to know every bit about it and how, right? Because if you're going to do it, we want to make sure it meets the rules. Are you discriminating against certain people and classes and so forth, right? Are you reading sentiment? Is that sentiment the following, right? So they haven't really wanted corporations to embrace that so much, at least in our instance, in our delve. So we ourselves haven't really embraced that 100% either, though, because of that. Doesn't mean it won't change. Whole new year, whole new rules and so forth. But at the moment, their love for that is minute. And hence, we still do things kind of the old-fashioned way. I don't think this company is looking to be the first person out there either that says, hey, let's just do it all AI and just put all that risk and that trust into something like that either, though. But you're right, Maz. I mean, there's the ability to do some things where you can automatically underwrite based on the given components that's necessary to respond to them, though.
Yeah, one of the reasons I asked, honestly, is because I know it's a hot button issue in the industry. So it'd be interesting to know how you guys are handling it, and it seems that you're basically handling it by avoidance, or you wait for someone else to be the guinea pig, which is
there's nothing wrong with that. Huh? There's not.
No, there is nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah, particularly in an industry that, how do I say, the government likes to find.
That's right. That's true.
Yeah.
So as long as we are doing what's best for our customers, doing what's best for our organization, and following the rules necessary, then we'll probably still continue to play in that playground. And I'm sure there'll be a disruptor at some place, sometime, who has more backing, maybe take more risk and give that a shot. But it probably won't be us.
I think sometimes it's better to wait as well, right? I think products vary so often, and like Maz said, let others be the guinea pigs. So but I think agent forces gathering momentum depending on who you speak to. They reckon around 1,000 customers are utilizing agent force in some capacity or about to. So watch this space. I think there'll be updates before the end of the year for sure. We're already seeing successful case studies of companies coming out and saying it's already impacted XYZ. So anything else, Chris, other than kind of AI? If we step away from AI and Agent Force, any other general projects for your Salesforce team this year?
Really just working with third-party partners, how they refer business to us, like a Credit Karma, which is a big partner for us, and many others as well too. Though, how do we work with them? How do we get things back to them as well, to our other third-party partners in those regards? Those are probably our biggest connectors, and making sure that we can help provide, because we're looking for a certain type of customer, and the people that come to us don't always meet that need, but it doesn't mean that they don't have a need, right? So we want to make sure that we don't just deny them because they don't meet what we're looking for. We want to make sure that we can get them to the right space as well too, though. So just making sure that we have a better customer experience from an end standpoint, not just the customers we're wanting to do business with, but just from everybody, totality. Probably working with them and those other corporations more, so to segment things a little bit better, and how we can get that referral over to them for success for everybody.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say there might not be a customer today, but there could be a couple of years down the line, and that touch point, if it's positive or negative, could impact their decision on whether to reopen that conversation?
Yes, very true. And you remember when we started, as Matt said, we're focused on healthcare professionals. That's still our niche, right? And so just because you're not a healthcare professional doesn't mean you wouldn't get a loan, but we're going to be a lot less guarded, or we're a lot more guarded about people who are not, from in that kind of industry versus something else that we're familiar with, right? So if you came to us and said, oh, well, I'm a hedge fund manager or something, and I want to borrow this from blah, 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 and we're like, that's not really our bailiwick, right? So we don't know a lot about it. Underwriting, that's a little bit trickier for us than it is for somebody who says, well, I own a dental practice, and this is how much we do, and this is how we do those aspects. So we just want to make sure that we get people that right opportunity and experience, and that's why we want to make sure that everybody is successful in that regards.
Could you and would you look to monetize that kind of partner referral type of scenario, or too soon to tell? Or
it'd be hard to know. I mean, I'm sure you could, right? our owners are extremely bright. And so if that's something that they could do, they're going to, because there's a cost to still doing that, right? There's still money involved for me to get that referral out to them. So maybe having that referral aspect, say whether whether it's 5 cents per lead back to you or $50 type of thing. I'm sure they'll look into that, but that hadn't been the discussion yet. It's more about how do we really make sure people have a good experience.
Got it. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any parting thoughts before we thank you for your time? Anything else that you think's worth sharing with our listeners?
Just for those who are in the industry, it's a scary time, right? Because everybody hears about AI taking over and such. I promise you, it will not overtake everything that anybody's doing all the time. It just won't. There's no possible way. So don't feel like it's not something to get into. Salesforce is still a great and unique system, and it's always going to need people, always need bodies, it always needs decision makers. So stick with it. I promise you, it'll pay off in the long run. That's the only thing I'd say.
Any particular skill set you would advise listeners to? Because obviously that is a concern that a lot of people have. Teams will reduce and more businesses will hire nearshore, offshore to reduce their US presence. But you're right, for good people, good talent, they'll still be in demand. And sat my side, I can vouch for that as well. But if you were, let's say, an admin with a couple of years experience, where would you be? What type of skill set would you be brushing upon?
I would say that the greatest need is security. And it's not from the Salesforce side of security. It's from a corporation's understanding of how security works within a Salesforce realm. All these companies, all these industries that I've worked through, no security group at those companies understood Salesforce. And they had nobody to rely on except us. And they still miss the gamut all the time. So if you have just a small amount of modicum of knowledge of Salesforce, and you embrace a little bit of security side, you can speak those two languages, I guarantee you'll fit those gaps so well, because there's huge amounts of security needs and lots of missing knowledge about there. So if I was you, I would just consider that. And it's not hard to learn cybersecurity. It's not. The language is easy and great. It really is. Just embrace those two items, because security is always going to be needed. Auditors are always going to want it. They're always going to want to speak to it no matter what. The regulators are always going to be there asking those questions to fill those gaps. I promise you that. And data. Data is always there as well too, though, no matter what. Data is always a need. You can't have good AI without good clean data. And most companies are crap job about clean data. They just do an awful job. No company I've ever worked for has a great job of data. They just don't, because it's something that gets sacrificed and they don't think about it until they really need it. And now with AI, you need it. If you're going to rely on decisions to be made, you better have the most up-to-date information you possibly can, and it best be the most accurate, because without it, you've got garbage. That's all you'll get. So those two things are probably what I focus on.
Yeah, I think security is a very interesting one. Not a massive area for me and my just kind of demand from customers, right? But I think you're right. It's important. And then outside of that, I think that you're absolutely spot on with data, and I've definitely heard that maybe 5-6 times a week since the start of the year. So I think we're all in alliance, with you on that one. So all right, Chris. Well, look, thank you for your time. It was great to hear a bit more about kind of lending and health, kind of combined, and the projects that you've overseen so far in a couple of years there. So we really appreciate your time.
No, I really appreciate you all as well too. I wish you all a wonderful 2025, and thank you for everything.
Oh, thank you, man.
Appreciate you, Chris. And for our listeners, you know what to do. Please hit follow and subscribe to the CRM Success Show for more episodes with fascinating leaders like Chris, who are willing to give their insights and experience for the greater good. So thanks again, Chris.
Thank you all.